Hello and welcome to our latest episode of the Kith and Kin podcast, Stories from the Hospitality Industry. I'm really happy to welcome Sorrel here today to tell us all about the ups and downs that have brought her to where she is and what makes the hospitality industry so special. So hi, thank you so much for joining me with this conversation. So can we just get started with an introduction to who you are and what you do, please?
Hi, I'm Sorrel Ward. I'm actually starting a new job tomorrow as Sales and Marketing Director of Wembley Arena.
Very exciting. That is very, very exciting. But yeah. and I say, as always, I'm always very excited about what people do now. But I also know there's always been a long journey to get to that point. And so let's just start with where you started. Where's your hospitality journey begin?
So I've always worked in hospitality in one way or another. Started out, my first job was on a burger stall at a Sunday market when I was 14. Ended up in a burger bar, an actual sort of bricks and mortar burger place. I didn't have a fixation with burgers. It's just the way it happened.
Were you flipping burgers or were you serving? Was it cash and taking the money or was it flipping
everything?
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was all of it.
You did a lot, yeah.
Yeah. And all great experience. And I think that's probably where I first got my love of customer service and, serving people, making people smile. I had a brief foray at beef eater when I was in my later teens. And then...
Does it still exist?
Yeah, they do, yeah.
I just think...
Back in my day...
Everywhere. They used to be absolutely...
Yes.
Yeah.
And they still are. There's still, a lot of them around. But yes, there doesn't seem to be as many. It was beef eater and Bernie, wasn't it? That was the only thing.
Everywhere.
Yeah. I had to wear the most awful red, white and yellow tabard and a frilly blouse to sort of represent a beef eater. Anyway.
Hilarious, yeah.
And I still remember the things we used to have to say. Would you like onion rings with that? Etc. It still go through my head. Anyway. I then went to uni and I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to act, to perform. Of course, that's a really tough thing to get into.
Yeah.
I supplemented it with bar work and worked.
But did you find when you were sort of working in hospitality, wanting to be an actress, that actually those sort of roles in hospitality are quite a lot of sort of, there's an acting sort of element to it, isn't there?
Definitely, yeah. Because whatever your mood, you've got to mask that. You've got to, get that smile slapped on and sometimes bend down and swear under your breath, out of sight. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I just know that when I was younger and at uni, I was excruciatingly shy, and it wasn't until I stepped behind a bar and started doing bar work that I suddenly felt really comfortable because it was an acting role, because you were something to the customer and the customer needed you to be something to them, and so you played that role for them. And it felt really comfortable. And I think through that, I think that's one of the reasons why I fell in love with hospitality, because you could have so much fun at being really, really good at the role you were playing. But then obviously, I mean, I tell people I'm shy now and they go, yeah, right. So I learned some skills through hospitality. But yeah, sorry, carry on with your story with,
I did that working in, I went to uni in Liverpool, so I worked in a local pub there. And then in the holidays, the first holiday, I worked in a local pub to me here, where I grew up. And I worked in the kitchen originally, but I very quickly realised, my place was out the front. I was not a back of house kind of girl. And then in my between my second and third year, I went and did probably 4 months in a hotel in Guernsey, which was a great experience. So I went with my best friend. We had literally had the time of our
That
lives.
must have been absolutely lovely, because I mean, not only a beautiful place, beautiful weather, at the same time as, you know, being paid to be there as well.
Exactly. And there was all of the staff, we were all a similar age from around the UK. There were some islanders working there. I learned to chambermaid, I learned to silver service waitress. I really sort of built my skills. And fell in love with it even more. And it was just great because the latest we would work till would be 9 o'clock, and then it was out and party, and it was brilliant. And I actually went back when I graduated. I went back and I did the summer again, but I stayed until about October. So I did about 6 months. And it was just brilliant, just brilliant.
Yeah. That seasonal
and
work
then
fun, isn't it? I mean, I did a season as well at one point, but because it feels like you're delivering these wonderful experiences with people because they're on holiday and doing all of that, but at the same time you're working really, really hard. But it is sort of it's temporary, isn't it? And it's got this sort of fun feel the whole time, even though you're exhausted from all the work. But there is this it's a great thing for young people to be doing.
It really is. And somewhere like that was great because there was so much to do. If you were doing a split shift, you could just pop out to the beach or whatever. Yeah. And like you say, you've got to really know the customers because they were there for a week or 2 weeks. Yeah. And then we had a really good restaurant. So lots of the locals would come regularly. And it was lovely. It was just lovely.
Yeah.
I couldn't say a bad word about it. And I'm sure there were bad days, but not in my memory, it was brilliant. And then I sort of trying to settle into normal life. I got an office job, really wasn't for me, and decided that I wanted to travel a bit. And the route to that was saving money by working in hospitality. So I was juggling a number of jobs, bar managing and doing whatever, waiting on the whole sort of remit just to get money to go and travel. Whilst I was doing one of the sort of temporary jobs, the saving money jobs, I met a South African chap that ended up in a relationship with. So I planned to go to Australia, but ended up going to his hometown, which was Cape Town.
Wow.
And went there for about a year, worked illegally in a restaurant, in a trattoria. And this was probably the hardest job of my life. It was a family-run trattoria called Nino's. It was famous in Cape Town for being, really, really good food, really, really good service. They wouldn't let you wait on a table until you had passed a very rigorous test. And that was sort of 2-3 weeks in. And I mean, it was just the owner, Nino, worked in the kitchen, and he was evil, really. he was not, but he was a typical, very passionate Italian, and he wanted it done right. If you made a mistake, he would come out and tear strips off you in the middle of the restaurant in front of everyone.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to write down an order.
Yeah, I've worked in those kind of places. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. We weren't allowed to write down orders. We had to memorize them.
Wow. That is taking that to an extreme, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah. But I mean, worst was, I think I had a table of 34, 2 courses, and I had to memorize all of that.
That is such a skill, and that is a skill that sort of waiting staff do all the time. If you get your job, it's part of your job. I always used to use the pads and just sort of scribble. I wasn't even writing, I don't think, because I was keeping most of it in my head. But to not be allowed to put it in your, to write it down, just adds that level of pressure. Like,
yeah.
I have nothing to keep me on track of what I'm remembering. Oh, wow,
But the fear of Nino was enough to make it land.
Yeah. Well, that's all.
Yeah.
What?
Another skill learnt.
Yeah.
And again, it was really bloody hard, and it was really hard work. It was such a busy place, and it was really high turnover. It was, the camaraderie amongst the team was brilliant. I met an English girl working there who I became really, really good friends with. She also had, my boyfriend was called Bruce. She also had a South African boyfriend called Bruce, and we knocked around together. And I ended up working for her when I came back to the UK. So I did South Africa and then went to Australia. I did about a year and a half in Australia. Predominantly, I was managing a cafe that was all fresh produce. Everything was made fresh on the day, and then given to the homeless or given to travellers at the end of the day. They also owned an outside catering business, so I managed functions for them as well, and that was again brilliant experience and a brilliant way to sort of live in Australia. And then when I came back, my friend Angela, who I'd met in working in Nino's in Cape Town, was working for Scottish and Newcastle Retail, running a pub in the city, and she needed some help with her. It was a pub just off of Chancery Lane, had a salt beef bar because of where it was. It was right by the Jewish Chronicle. And so she needed some help running that sort of little food counter. So I went and helped her. Whilst I was there, did a bit of bar work as well. Area manager, I guess, saw something in me. I was a bit I didn't know what I was doing with my life, really. And he saw something in me and said, I think you should come and join us as a management trainee, which is what I did. So I went on the what was then a 10-week management training program.
But previous to that, had you thought that would be a path you might take? Or, I mean, had a career in hospitality been something you'd considered, or just?
I hadn't really. I loved it, and I knew I loved it, and I just carried on doing it. But I hadn't really got any aspirations. I was just sort of, doing what I enjoyed. And I guess I was that age where, I just didn't have any aspirations or ambitions, really. I just wanted to be having a good time, earning enough money to have a good time, and enjoy what I do, but it was lovely to be identified as somebody with a bit of talent, helped my ego. And I really, really enjoyed seeing that side of it. I'd always, I'd managed the place in Australia. I'd done a bit of bar management at the local pub at home. So I'd had an appetite for learning about the business, really. And it was great to have that opportunity. Most of it was on the job, but I did, I think, a week's course up at the brewery in Newcastle, which was fab. Again, met loads of brilliant people, and then stayed with S&N for a number of years, running pubs for them, and ultimately becoming a trainer manager myself. So my last pub I ran was a training house, so I would get the 10-week trainees and show them.
But that must have been really good fun. I mean, because that once you get to that stage and actually you're watching new people learn stuff, and you've got that in, there's sort of quite a lot of there's a lot to be gained, isn't there, from sort of like passing that knowledge on, and
so rewarding. And I've always been really conscious that I've had so much invested in me, people time, spent training me. I wanted to, pay it back, give it back, or pay it forward. And it's lovely. And I'm still friends with almost all of them, the trainees that came through me, and which is it's lovely and lovely seeing them flourish and go on
and they go on to do great
careers in hospitality.
Yeah, fantastic.
And I think that's the other thing is it is a career, but it's often not seen as a career. I really saw that in Australia. It is a career in Australia, and it's really invested in Australia. Paid much better. There's loads of management training programs and the like, and it's taken really seriously as a career. It's just not here, and it less and less so, I feel, and it's such a shame because there isn't, there aren't kids coming through the ranks anymore with a desire to do this as a career. It's just seen as a stopgap, which was a shame.
Yeah, it is. It is a shame, and it's an ongoing problem, isn't it? That's what the industry feels, that it's sort of. But I think for a lot of people, even that we interview on the podcast, they love hospitality, but it takes them a while to get into it because they feel this pressure that it isn't a proper job and they're not doing what they should be doing, and that actually this is just a stopgap. And certainly that's, as I've been an employer in the industry for decades, and you certainly feel that from the young people you're working with. Sometimes their parents are saying, when are you going to go and get a proper job? And that's a challenge.
Yeah, really is. And it's a shame because it is, it's such a fulfilling career. It really is. I'm testament to that. I've been around the block a number of times and, you're here doing it and loving it. And,
So where next? What happened next?
So I'd felt I had done my time behind the ramp, as it were, and and it is taxing, and I absolutely love it, and I still love nothing more than jumping behind the bar or waiting on tables or whatever. But I'd done my time. Exactly. And there was an opportunity to become a central trainer for the patch that I worked on, the London patch. So that's what I did. So it was, carried on in a training role, but I became more sort of classroom based or going round to the pubs and doing one-to-one training, which again, I absolutely loved because it was exposing me to the more, the support centre and the head office and that bigger part of the corporation, if you like. When you're running a business, you're kind of a bit sheltered from all of that, aren't you? So it was a real learning curve from that point of view and exposing me to other stuff, and then but still being able to share that knowledge and pay forward everything I'd sort of learned. So I had a fantastic time doing that. And, sort of slotting into a new team. It was challenging. My boss at the time, the ops director, said the hardest thing you're going to find is having those different conversations with your peers. So the people that you've been running businesses alongside, you're now going to have a different sort of style of conversation. And he was right. And it was hard. And, some absolutely took to me in that new role perfectly, but others found it really hard to have me, almost judging them or, on how they were training their staff or whatever.
I used to find that with just, in my teams, when you internally promoted someone, that was always the conversation I had to have with them. Like, you started as bar staff, you were just in the team, just one of the gang, and now you're a supervisor. Your role has changed completely. You're now having to do a completely different job, but also everyone's going to think of you differently and treat you differently and question you. And it's hard. I always found that those jumps up were really hard for people to make that step because of how other people reacted to that.
Yeah. And they're your mates, aren't they? And suddenly they don't trust you, or they won't have say certain things around you, and that's horrible. And I'm a really personable person, and I want to be loved. And then suddenly to feel that little bit of, it's just a shift in the relationship, isn't it? But
it's a really tough thing. It's a really tough thing to navigate for people,
but always worth it.
Yeah,
right. It is always worth it, and and the relationships that should endure will endure.
Absolutely.
When you like you say, you navigate your way around it, and those that don't probably weren't, the right ones to continue anyway. So I did a bit of time doing that, and working out of the centre, and sort of getting ingratiated within the support team. And from that, I transitioned into a more of a food role. There was a need for, it was a compliance role, really. They needed somebody to set up a team of chefs, area chefs, I think we called them, who supported the pubs and the pub kitchens from a kitchen management point of view, but compliance and, making sure temperature checks were done, all of that sort of thing. So I set up a team and all the processes that needed to happen. And I don't really know how it came to pass and why I was identified as the person to do that. I guess, again, they saw something in me. I'm quite a structured, organised person, and clearly, I guess, good at that sort of training development piece. So that's how it landed, and I did that for.
That's one of the things that's really lovely about the industry, is that you can come in, everyone comes in at one level, but actually then you sort of find that narrow, thin sort of line as to what is your talents and skills, and the jobs sort of fit around you, and everyone finds their way, don't they? It's a really fascinating. You find your strengths in the industry.
Yeah, and I think Scottish and Newcastle was particularly good at it, or the senior team were really good at making that happen, and seeing in people, their strengths and where they could best develop, but also support the business. It wasn't completely altruistic there, what they were doing. But a great opportunity for me. Again, new things to learn, new people to work with, and brilliant. That role sat between HR, L&D, and commercial and marketing for some reason, and that's the way it landed. So I sort of had dotted lines into two departments. And as a result of the working with the commercial team, I ended up doing a bit of food marketing and getting more and more involved in the marketing part of the food, and not just the, I guess, the sort of development. We had a development kitchen that was just around the corner from head office. And, I think, again, it was sort of one of those things that perhaps somebody highlighted, saw something in me, my boss at the time, and sort of moved into food marketing, and then that became more generalist and developing menus, but the drink part of the menus, and then it's a more sort of generalist hospitality marketing.
At this time, what is the size of Scottish Newcastle back at that?
It was big. So, we had, I think 800 odd pubs in the retail division. There was also the branded division, which was separate. It was a big old business, and we were split into regions. I was in the London region, which I, absolutely loved. And interestingly, I'm still really good friends with everybody I worked with at that time. And I mean, really good friends, as in see really regularly. And it's characters like Rob Pitcher, who is the CEO of Revolution, or its new name. Toby Smith, who is, he was until recently, CEO of, he did Laurel, he did Novus. I worked with him at City Pub Group,
Yeah.
various places. And all of the characters that I was working with in that central team are still great friends and still very much in hospitality in their different guises, which is, again, testament, I think, to S&N, but also to the way that we were molded, developed, evolved, as people, and coached.
It's that really
Brilliant.
amazing thing, isn't it, when something special happens and then it sort of just ripples out and you can turn back
Yeah.
and later and just go, oh, look at that. Look, that only happened because of that and that and that. And actually, that we're all part of the same thing. And it's really, I mean, it's great. And it's great in life anyway, you see that. But I think particularly in hospitality, you can connect the dots really nicely quite often.
Yeah, it is. It's phenomenal. And it's true of everywhere I've worked, actually. It is, I think it is it's more than just a job, isn't it? It is a lifestyle. You have to really love it, believe in it. It's certainly not 9 to 5. It courses through your veins, doesn't it? And I think for that reason, you gravitate to the people that work within it, and
and those people, it becomes a lot of, you hear it again and again, and you see it all the time. It sort of becomes family in a way, these friends beyond just colleagues, and they're even beyond just friendship groups. It's much more than that. It's because you grow in these spaces together with all that learning and all these, and because it's so exciting, it feels like something special happened, even if it's, as going back to, working in Guernsey. One of the things that I loved about when I worked a season, it was all these people coming together, and you were all on doing a task and a mission, and you had to, there was it was a finite amount of time, so everyone put everything into it. But the relationships that came out of that, it just, because it felt like we were all on it sort of created a team that then felt like you were doing something really, really worthwhile, and that actually you come away from it and you look back on it all the time and going, wow, that was really special what happened then. And I think that hospitality is full of those stories of people coming together, sort of almost random. I mean, you see it with my staff. I went to a wedding reasonably recently of a member of staff, a member of staff who hadn't worked for me for years, but I went there, and it was just all of the friends were all people who worked with me, and who's like worked for me, and it's like it's this moment in time when these people all came together, and it's just absolutely magic. And I think it's one of the things people massively fall in love with the industry, just that connection with the other people and that feeling of something special happening.
Yeah, and it's so true. Yeah, I mean, all of my friendship groups, apart from, I've got some friends that are school friends. Other than that, everybody is, I've worked with, and they are, like you say, they're really close friends, because you've done that thing together that's others don't understand, actually, that work in an office job or whatever it might be,
because it's not an office job. An office job is sort of like everything's the same every single day and it remains the same, whereas these hospitality has these moments of just something really magic and special happen. Lovely, brilliant. Sorry, I interrupted your story. Carry on. Let's oh no, I have to know. So where do we go after that?
So I then that was where my marketing journey began, and has continued, and I've stayed and I've sort of worked my way up through the marketing ranks, if you like. Scottish and Newcastle got bought by Spirit. I did a few years with Spirit as a marketing manager and a sort of senior marketing manager, looking after different brands or concepts. Again, still friends with all of those people. And then couple of my colleagues from Scottish and Newcastle, and then latterly at Spirit, moved to Regent Inns, and asked me to come and join. So I joined them as Jongler's brand manager.
Nice.
Back in the day, which was brilliant, and that was it was another sort of change really, because it wasn't just F&B. It was, you know, this extra layer of entertainment. There was also, you know, we had a call centre, because back in that time, you know, there were booking platforms for tickets. It was, you know.
The thing, so Jongleurs, so if anyone doesn't know, Jongleurs was a comedy club, wasn't it? They were sort
Exactly.
of a chain of comedy clubs, which is amazing. But yeah, and to me, that doesn't feel like it was like long ago, because I remember it coming to a high street near me and getting really like, oh wow, and but actually, as you say, times have changed so quickly. You know, back then you had, you know, you haven't had call centres for people to book, rather than these days, which is somebody walking around with their phone going, "Yep, done, off we go."
Exactly that. Yeah. So, but that was a massive learning curve, because that sales, you know, sort of process I hadn't really been exposed to, because it just didn't exist in pubs at the time. You certainly did book tables in pubs then. So yeah, phenomenal. We had dynamic pricing, which again was the first time I'd ever bumped into something, you know, as crazy as that. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, went from there to Novus Leisure. So my a marketing manager that I'd worked for at Spirit, she was a senior marketing manager when I was a regular marketing manager, whatever, had joined Novus. She was working for our old boss. He'd gone over there. She fell pregnant, so they asked me to come and do the mat cover, which I did, but she didn't come back after she had twins, and she had them really early, so she didn't come back. So I ended up at Novus for about 3 years. Again, a massive learning curve, and a massive growth in my friend set, because that was really bloody hard work. We worked hard, but we played hard. And I was that time of my life where, you know, pre-kids, you know, being too responsible, where our office was in Leicester Square, so you can imagine. And I, you know, really good friends with loads of those characters. And again, you know, loads of my team. One of my team is now the marketing director of Bistro Pierre. One of my team is the marketing director of Brewdog. You know, so did a lot of developing people there. Had you know, big teams, big, you know, big business. So yeah, did that for a couple of years. Then I decided to have a little foray on my own. So it was the last recession, actually. I set up by myself, and fortunately, because of all my, you know, connections and the way that people had dissipated from Scottish and Newcastle and Spirit into different businesses, and I ended up, you know, doing contracts here, there, and everywhere, including doing Novus the whole time. Lots of that, and then I ended up going back to Novus for about another 3 years, because I had a client who went bust and didn't pay me at the very same time that Novus had lost a marketing director and needed somebody to sort of steer the ship. So they persuaded me, and I was very easily persuaded, having had this horrible situation. So yeah, I went back to them for a few years, and then a couple more years working for myself. Bumped into COVID, carried on working for myself through COVID, and then came out of that and back into employed with Toby Smith, who mentioned earlier I'd worked with back at S&N. He at this point had just joined City Pub Group, and they needed a marketing director. So yeah, off I went and worked for them.
This is all sort of testament to these power of these. I was going back to what we were talking about before. These power of these networks that are created early on, isn't it? And if anyone wants to understand why your network is so important. You know,
Beyond important.
Yeah, yeah. It's
because that takes me to almost back to where I am now. So I did a couple of years at City Pub Group. Opportunity came to for marketing director for Frank Manca. So I joined them, had a fabulous time there.
So Frank are the pizzas, is that right?
That's right. Sourdough pizzas, Neapolitan pizzas, of which there are 70 restaurants across the UK, a couple of franchises in Europe. Not long after I joined, the business was bought, and as part of that, they recruited a new CEO. There wasn't the one didn't exist, and he decided at the beginning of last year to restructure the senior team, and as a result, myself and the marketing director, Frank Manca, and for the Real Greek, were all made redundant. Which happens.
That's just what happens, isn't it? You get a company takes on a new leadership, and everything changes again, and that's
absolutely fair enough. And so I finished at the beginning of June. Consciously took the summer off, and then started to panic a little bit about finding a job. I put quite an impassioned post on LinkedIn in middle of September, saying it's really hard. This is really hard. It's staggering. I've never had to find a job. I've been really lucky. That network has bounced me through things. So it was a new experience for me. Obviously, the market's tough, but what I was staggered by was the recruiters that would reach out and then just ghost you. You'd have a conversation and then they'd just go quiet. I mean, it's staggering. I posted just to say it's really hard. I'm available for permanent or contract work, and that marketing manager who'd gone on off to have her twins at Nova. I worked with years and years ago at Spirit, messaged me to say, I've got an opportunity, or I've got a couple of opportunities actually. She was at ASM Global, own 15 odd arenas throughout the UK, well, globally actually, but she works for the UK branch. And so talked to me about this opportunity at Wembley Arena, and here I am. I'm starting tomorrow.
And that's amazing. I mean, congratulations on the new job, but what an exciting job. I mean, Wembley Arena, that's amazing. I mean, because there must be just so much going on in space, and a lot for you to play with, really.
I think there's a huge opportunity, not just filling the days that aren't, full at the moment, but also, there's all that space. There's a big corporate opportunity, I think, with, big conferences and events down to smaller team building kind of stuff. They've got, all sorts of lounges and beautiful spaces within there. It's so accessible. I can't wait to get my hands on it and get stuck in, and
very exciting. And I'm sure also at Wembley you're going to get to see some amazing stuff as well, because there's just amazing stuff that goes on there, and you'll be part of all of that, and how it's really exciting. And what a great journey, all of it coming from working flipping burgers. So I know you are, but really and it's incredible. And I say we go back to some of what we were talking about just earlier. Just this idea that hospitality is just something you do just whilst you wait for the real job to come along. But actually, by doing it, you create those opportunities within the industry, because the industry is just so vast and so exciting. It's just so much. Exciting. There's so much to do in the industry, and it's almost like every single role you can possibly think of exists in the hospitality industry. And I think it's what people don't realise. They think it's just bar staff and waiting staff or kitchen porters.
That.
But actually, the skills you learn there you just build on and move, to take you wherever you want to go, really. And it's just really, really exciting.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Yeah. So thank you so much for your time and sharing your story with us. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, how can they? Is LinkedIn the best way to contact you?
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I will make sure that is in our show notes when this goes live. And in the meantime, thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely fantastic to hear your story, and look forward to speaking to you again sometime soon.
Thank you, Cassie.